Adam Boehler joins us now. It must be killing him to know this is going on. He's the CEO of Rubicon Founders, who is a senior member and a Trump official of the Abraham Accords negotiating team. Adam, welcome back.
Thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate it. And you're 100% right. It's hard to look at that picture.
So what are your thoughts? You know the players. You understand that Saudi Arabia is no Jeffersonian democracy, but you know in the region it's to America's advantage to have an alliance with them like FDR noted in the 1940s. Nothing's changed.
So I directly negotiated senior levels with the Saudis and with the Middle Eastern countries, including Israel. And my agency was responsible with competing with China's Belt and Road Initiative. And so what happens here, this didn't have to be like this at all. And you're 100% right in your opening comments where the United States under President Trump took a very big leadership position. And the Saudis, when we were leaving, said we could normalize with Israel within the next 6-12 months if things continue on a positive trajectory. And so this is exactly what you don't want to see. And the one thing I'll say on the genius of the Abraham Accords from my perspective, people see it as a peace accord, which it is. But at the end of the day, it was enabled by one thing. It was uniting the region against a common enemy, and that was Iran. And that's what enabled the coming together of the region under U.S. leadership. And so this is a big turn. And not a good one.
So the prince knew, and look, I don't want to sit here and have someone listening to our show and go, Adam Boehler and Brian Kilmeade love Saudi Arabia. No, but in the region, in the area, it is our best option. And we do have an alliance with them, and they did play a vital role in us winning the Cold War against the Soviets. That's just a fact. While never being saying to ourselves, wow, isn't it great the way they treat women? Absolutely not. We believe everybody should be equal, but we do not control everyone's society. Having said that, the Crown Prince heard Joe Biden say, if I win, I'm going to make them a pariah nation. And he never forgot it. And while retracting the power that we had with oil and gas. So we're losing the leverage that would maybe keep Saudi Arabia with us because they were competing with us, at the same time rhetorically isolating them, and they took it personal.
And look, it's half measures. So at the end of the day, it's easy politically to say negative things because what you said is exactly right, Brian. We don't like everything that they do. We don't like everything that a lot of countries do, to be specific. And so we made a lot of comments. We came in. He was ostracized. The country was ostracized. There was a visit. You decide to go and you visit. Then you don't shake hands. It's this half measure thing. And the half measure thing doesn't work. You decide on practical policy. And what the Saudis need to see from the United States is a continued backing and a continued presence. When it shifts around like that, and then you start saying, well, hey, the Iranians are backing the Houthis. We're not going to support you with weapons against it. You run into issues because where is the backing? And so then Saudi looks for others, and there's China's opening. And that's what they took. And now you have a situation where the United States has lost leadership. I still have hope we can re-get it.
We can.
By the way, I don't think it's done. Yes. Because this is my experience my job, as I said, is to compete against China with both our military and economic might. And at the end of the day, most countries, almost all, would rather have the United States partner with them. They know the negatives of China. So we need to get in there, and we need to show consistency and strength. We can turn this. I always believe that. It's never too late. But if we don't, then you're going to see the region go the other way.
And it just play this out. Israel says, really, the U.S. is taking the pressure off Iran. They're loosening up the sanctions, still on some Hail Mary way, want to get back into that terrible nuclear deal. So if they think they're weaponizing uranium to the point where they can make a bomb, Israel is already there. The Mossad reportedly basically has a summer home in and around these nuclear plants, and they're assassinating scientists and blowing up buildings. They are not going to tolerate Holocaust 2. They just won't do it. So by us pulling away, we're making Israel take action.
100%, and we're not backing our strongest ally, and this is what it comes down to. When you're doing foreign policy, there's some politics involved, but at the end of the day, do you want to pursue practical foreign policy that works, that shows the United States' strength? And so weakness begets everything in foreign policy. One thing begets the other. So I'll tell you the history of why this happened. It started with our failed pullout of Afghanistan.
Yep.
And I was talking with the Crown Prince of Bahrain after that, and he said, What that shows to others in the region is that the United States doesn't have the fortitude to say and backs out and doesn't look. We didn't have to have a huge troop presence there, but you decide to back out of the country when it's time to back out, not based on a certain date. You define it based on a mission when we're ready, not when the Taliban's ready. That showed something. And by the way, it showed something to President Putin. And that's why we saw what happened in Russia. It showed something to China. And if we're not careful, this is the important thing here, too, because it's not just foreign policy and Middle East world order. You see what happens practically at home, because here's what this means. Then Putin invades Ukraine because we look weak. And we don't make the moves we should. What does that mean to us? We're funding billions and billions of dollars to defend Ukraine. As China gets more strength here, where does this go? This will beget Taiwan. And I guarantee you, American consumers ultimately are going to pay that price, too, from a dollar perspective. So it's how foreign policy connects into our everyday lives. And I will tell you one other thing, too, and this is related to gas prices. In our administration, it would have been a simple call to the Saudis to say, hey, tamp down for a bit. We're allies. When you've ostracized the Saudis to that level, and then you make that call, which was done, the call was attempted, and then there was a visit, they're not listening anymore. So these things, these all link to everyday gas prices, how much our taxes go up because we're funding billions of dollars abroad. So that's the connection, I think. And I think as China grows in strength, we lose.
Right. And the good news is economically, they are suffering now. And if you're breaking it down, if you saw the Wall Street Journal, they have a new guy in charge of their budget, whatever their version of a Treasury Secretary is, who's tight with President Xi. And they know they got a huge unemployment problem between 18 and 25. These people aren't working. They know by taking away the market incentives from these successful companies and basically arresting or sidelining these entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs are leaving. And we should bring them here. The Jack 100%. Ma's of the world. So they know they're going to pay the price for that. They don't understand, or they're underestimating the need for incentive when it comes to business, even in a pseudo-communist country that this guy, President Xi, just wants all-encompassing power. But you're not going to get the production. That's been the history of that former government. But I got to ask you, Madam Boehler, with your experience, we have to have a plan, too, to replenish our stocks that were given to Ukraine. And these are American companies. So we have to, I understand that with administrations and these companies, they're unwilling to invest heavily because they don't know if they're going to lose an election and be left out to dry with all this product. Is there a contract that would transcend administrations? Can I get Raytheon a 10-year deal to build planes, javelins? Can I get that done even though I won't be in power then?
You can do that. I mean, if Congress pass a law from that perspective or gives flexibility, so that's a congressional decision. But if the laws are passed, they can, and there can be continuity in a way that an administration can't break it. And I do think continuity would be important. But that's ultimately a law would need to be passed from that perspective.
Gotcha. So that has to be done. And, of course, Ukraine, I'm fully in support. People just aren't in support of what President Biden, his decisions. So when they find something they agree with, they feel wary about agreeing with them, but the slow walking of weapons is enabling the killing and keeps victory at bay.
Well, that's what. Look, I will give the administration I'll give credit in certain ways. For example, I think the declassification of military intelligence stopped Putin from faking a lot. I think we got a lot of Western European allies on board, and I would have told you I went to bet on that. And you know what? That worked out well. Here's the problem. We knew all of these things, but we didn't act early. And I agree with you 100% with it. It's almost like we're a reporter. We're telling everybody, why do we keep on pushing in half measures? We talk about getting them tanks. Oh, we're going to get them tanks. And then 6 months later, we send them tanks. Now we're doing the same thing on the jets. My view on this stuff is exactly what yours is, which is, listen, we either do it or we don't do it. Stop dripping it because people are dying and the Russians are getting the upper hand. Give them what they need or don't. Make your call, but don't make it slowly like we've been doing. And so I think bolder action on this stuff will enable Ukraine a lot better than kind of this back and forth.
How significant is it that President Xi called us out directly last week, as well as his foreign minister, talk about America being the problem? We don't change our ways. Confrontation's inevitable. They usually talk in cryptic terms, and we know exactly what they mean, but they do it through their national newspaper. This is coming from the president. So they say our attempt to surround them, which I'm all for, having that with those meetings in San Diego yesterday with Australia and England and Britain, and then making sure that they understand we're expanding the Guam base, and the Philippines is now inviting us in, and we have a 100% increase in Japanese defense spending, and South Korea seems to get it. I'm all for that. And because of that, China's reaching out, lashing out. What is your assessment of that?
It means that you have an emboldened Chinese, and it's because of our lack of strength. And one of the things in our administration that I noticed is, if you think about our allies, we had strong relationships in the Western Hemisphere close to us. We had strong relationships all surrounding China and strong relationships in the Middle East. And who were China's allies? Venezuela, Iran, North Korea? They were third or fourth string allies. We cannot let that change because that's our strength. So the reason you see messages like that, the reason you see, Putin's foreign minister, president making like borderline ridiculous assertions about the war where people are laughing at them is because they're emboldened, and it's because of a lack of strength in our foreign policy. And, one other comment I would make on this is, and people don't know this, Abraham Accords were really, really empowered by a first single act, and that was killing al-Soleimani. When we killed him in Iraq, it showed that we meant business, and that strength empowered peace. And so people need to know you don't get peace through appeasement and weakness. You get it through strength and ability to act, because then you strengthen your allies and you show your enemies that you mean business, and that means they deal with you in a different way. We never had a risk. I was privy to everything within the government from a top secret level and above. We never had evidence that Russia was going to take over Ukraine. It wasn't on the radar that we looked at or really considered beyond scenario analysis. And this cropped up quickly, and it's because you have emboldened people. Emboldened people take action then. And that's when you see President Xi making comments like that, those are precursors to it's his justification, ultimately, to act in Taiwan, right? He's building up his case that we have surrounded them. He's building up the case that they need to take action. And I guarantee you the rhetoric's going to sound like Putin, where he made a case they had to, because of NATO surrounding them, they had to attack Ukraine. She is watching. They're going to say, because we have allies in the region, they had to do this. In fact, we forced them to do it. So you're seeing the rhetoric build up, and it will be justification if we're not careful.
I know, Adam, that's something to be aware of. I hope they're thinking about all scenarios because there's not going to be much time to act. We have to have a policy ready to go. And by the way, I think they are looking at what happened in Russia and thinking to themselves, they have not had any conflict since 1979, and that didn't go well. How ready are they? Besides war games, a lot different than an actual war. And if Taiwan is built up and ready to fight, they see what's happening in Russia, the embarrassment, the loss of life, the loss of money, the loss of prestige, the loss of trading partners. So there is a little bit of a risk that they're seeing now. Final thought?
My final thought is the Chinese aren't the Russians, just like the Russians are the Taliban. And so at the end of the day, we back down on someone that has a military force, 1/1000th or maybe less in Taliban. Russia's 1/10 or maybe less than us. That's not the case with Russia or with China, and so they're watching and learning. Quite frankly, they're a very good adversary. They're very smart. Half the time, I'd look at things and you'd say, "Oh, that was pretty smart. We should have done that." So they know what they're doing, and it's not Russia, and the military presence is much stronger. So I would assume they're watching, listening, learning, and they have a lot more power than the Russians if they decide to act.
All right, thanks so much, Adam. It's always great talking to you. The guy that's been in there in the trenches. And the frustration you must feel, so it's all the good you're doing is being threatened. Adam Boehler, thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep, and of course, Adam had such a big role with the Abraham Accords, which is still together, but they got hurt by what China's doing now. This is the Brian Kilmeade Show. Back with your calls and so much more. Don't move.